Yeah. Why do you think that no one in the Kemetic community has prepared in the same fashion or the same manner that you prepared to tackle the issues that have to do with their traditions, their customs, and in turn learn the metal netta, but no one in their community has ever made the effort to learn the Hebrew or even try to come, and show some things from the Hebrew perspective, like the way that you did, because that shows scholarship.
That's right.
I mean, people talk scholarship and they talk scholars, but how can you be a teacher or how can you be a priest or something and don't understand the language of the science that you're teaching?
That's right.
You understand what I'm saying? So why do you think that no one in the Kemetic community takes that time to do that?
Well, I want to say that I don't believe that anyone in the Kemetic community takes the time to objectively approach research is because they're enjoying the subjective narrative. They're enjoying the narrative that because the Bible lacks archaeological evidence that can be produced in museums, and Egypt is abundant in archaeological relics, they love the narrative that, okay, Egypt has more evidence of its history, the Bible has less, therefore Egypt trumps all, everything comes from Egypt. But even they themselves will tell you that there are several artifacts that don't make it to the Egyptian Museum, that they know for a fact, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Kemetic Grandmaster teachers who I've heard say these things several times. They know some of the greatest archaeological finds that came out of Kemet cannot be seen in museum. These are things that are held in places like the UK. We all know that one of the biggest libraries in the world is in the Vatican. We all know that the Vatican actually has miles. We're not talking about a room and secret chambers. We are talking about miles of rooms or of storage where ancient information is kept with no one or very little eyes ever being placed upon it. And they say that some of their greatest traditions are housed in places like that. Well, the children of Israel, we have the same thing. In fact, some of the archaeological relics that we do have actually shows taking our items and carrying them off. One of the more famous archaeological relics that we have is holding a menorah. It's holding the Ark of the Covenant, so to speak, and you see them marching off with them. So we actually have archaeological relics showing you where our archaeological relics were going. So let's not play games. We know that we have them, but we know that we don't have access to them. Right. There's a difference between not having evidence and not having access to the evidence. So we know for a fact that the police, I'll deal with New York City in this instance, are extremely corrupt, right? So we know that when they're at a murder scene, especially when there's a black person involved, we're very afraid because we know that they have access to all the DNA that they're going to be accumulating and all the other evidences, and we don't have that access, which means behind the scenes they can manipulate it or they can discard it and we'll never see it again. Such is the case with our literary history. There's so much of the literary history of the children of Israel or of Hebrews on a whole that we no longer have in our possession, that we no longer have access to, that Nohi literally has seen in over 2,000 years. So we're not going to say, or we're not going to play the game that we don't have archaeological relics. What we don't have is access to our archaeological records. I think that to close on that point, when a narrative is portrayed in a person's favor, and then the truth surfaces against that narrative, most people arguably will not go on the side of the truth. Mm-hmm. Most people will arguably go on the side of the narrative that is in favor of their victory or of their prowess. So when evidence surfaces that could make us look any better than what they have shown us to, they're liable to not talk about it, not discuss it, or never address it. So it's not that they're not aware of our legacy being authentic, they just rather not touch on it. So it doesn't behoove them to go and study or learn Hebrew because they're not on a journey of truth. And this is something that I've said openly recently to a lot of people that have asked me this question both on and offline. I said to them, although I'm an Israelite, and I'm very, very proud of an Israelite, make no mistake about it, I'm a truth seeker. We always talk about the Torah being true, and us being passionate adherents to it. But if you was to ever uncover evidence that could show you unequivocally, and we're speaking, of course, I'm just taking you through a scenario, right, so to speak. I'm using figurative language to discuss something that's not necessarily reality, yet is geared towards bringing us imaginatively to what you would actually do in various situations. If you're an adherent of Torah, and you encounter information that trumps it, that shows you that the Torah is false, what do you follow? Are you supposed to still follow the Torah? I'm proud enough of a truth seeker first to tell you that you're not supposed to follow Torah if you uncover evidence that makes it untrue. Now, until someone can come before me to prove to me unequivocally that the Torah is untrue, I'm Torah to the day I die. But because I'm a truth seeker first, I must be true to the truth. And this is what they lack. So, unlike them, our community has always been one that we push objective research. So our teachers didn't ban us from going into Kemetic studies and going to learn. Our teachers didn't ban us from reading the New Testament, things that we didn't grow up acquiescing to when it came to understanding Christianity. But our teachers told us, on the other hand, go and study those things, because they will empower you with a greater opinion when you speak to people who embrace those ideas. So if you haven't read the Torah in the original Hebrew language and you have a problem with it, you need to check your source, because 9 out of 10 times, any book of the Torah that you're reading that's not based on the original Hebrew, you're reading a European or a Eurocentric outlook on it. We love to talk in the Kemetic community that the Bible is a white man's book. And then you ask them why, and they say, oh, because King James is white. Let's walk with you there for a second. Who was the person that edited and redacted the Book of the Dead, which is a misnomer for the Pert Emheru? We know his name to be Wallace Budge. That's a white man. He's not the author, and he's extremely white. In Brother Jabari's words, that's the Talmud right there, right? He's extremely white, but he's not the author of the Bible. King James is not the author of the Bible. This is his version of the Bible. When Wallace Budge writes a book on the Pert Emheru, the Book of the Dead, this is his version of it. So we have to come back to objective study when we're making claims in an intellectual setting, or else we look like what we would call jackasses, for lack of a more prestigious term. So I want to say that what gave me an edge is the idea that I'm first a pursuer of truth. So I said, you know what? In order to free my mind of anything that would block me from finding the truth, I have to put aside my own thoughts, my own feelings, my own passions, my own ideas, my own beliefs for this moment. And I have to assume that what is coming out of Kemet could possibly trump what is in my book, what is in my spiritual system. And it's only when I began to study on those terms that great things were revealed to me during my studies, because I wasn't studying with a blind eye or with one hand covered over the eye. I studied with both eyes open and with my spiritual eye open, because I said that I'm a seeker of truth first. And perhaps this guy, Brother Jabari, is right, but he was wrong. And he was as wrong as one of my teachers would say, as two left shoes.
I heard that in the debate was about
the origins of civilization.
The origins of civilization.
Woo!
Right? And that he began to talk about Lucy.
Oh my God.
I don't know how true it is, but from what I seen, all the clips, and I give a big shout out to Brother Solomon,
right.
who's a Kemet to the core, right? But what I like about what he did was that he was very objective and going around and getting the temperature of the room at the time that the debate happened. That way you could get people's pure opinions at the time when the debate happened. And from the clips that I saw, there was a lot of people, including in their community, that said Zion Lexx handled this guy. And and did the job.
And we're talking about some key people. We're not just saying that he's interviewing random people in the audience that are not known to be immersed in the tradition of Kemet. He's interviewing people like Dr. Reggie, who is self-described as a doctor, aside from it being pseudo, with the idea that he's passionate about Kemet, and he's seen in the community as someone who genuinely believes in Kemetic practice and tradition, and is certainly rated among the very, very best by even the ranking top Kemetic Grandmaster teachers, for those who know their knowledge. I can remember Professor Smalls sitting on the couch with Brother Reggie, and Professor Smalls bowing, if you will, to the knowledge of Reggie when it comes to Kemet. There was a point in their conversation where Professor Smalls says, "This is Reggie's lane. I'm going to let him discuss the language because this is something that he mastered." There was a part of the Kemetic tradition that they touched on, and again, Professor Smalls, I give great credit and respect to him because this is humility. You know, for an elder to speak to someone, you know, almost 40 years younger than you and give them that kind of credit, it says a lot about that elder. And he gave those kudos and those respects to Dr. Reggie in those instances. And Jabari lost from the gate. And this is what essentially Solomon pointed out, because the topic of the debate is the origin of civilization. For those who don't know what civilization entails, we're talking about when things like government, agriculture, farming, law, and writing, the building of cities, irrigation, when all of these different things come together as a unit, as a whole, this is a civilization. Now, what Jabari did, very, very disingenuous, by the way, is he begins to give us the origins of mankind.
What do you think that is?
Which, by the way, well, let me touch on that. The origins of mankind, without a shadow of a doubt, is Africa. Everyone knows that. But guess what everyone else also knows? It's not Egypt. Right. Even Brother Jabari begins talking about the origin of mankind by going deep into South Africa, because it is known that man has his origins in Africa, mankind being birthed into the world. We know that there are no older bones anywhere in the world found in any place other than Africa. And we know the archeological implications of such. But that's not the topic. And I told Brother Jabari during the debate, I said, if the topic was the origins of man, you would have won from your first 5 minutes. But the topic is the origins of civilization. But I did say, but I understand why Brother Jabari felt that he had to go to Africa to validate Kemet, because he understands that we're having an argument not just about the origin of civilization. Remember what the subtitle is, Kemet and Sumer. So we're looking at not just the origin of civilization, we're focusing on two ancient people of antiquity, and we're asking, and we are bringing forth information to show who emerged first as a civilization. So we're actually not just talking about the origin of civilization, where we'd be looking deep into South Africa, or we'd be looking deep into the Tigris, Euphrates Valley, but we're talking about Kemet and Sumer. Which of these two civilizations came first, produced the signs of what we call civilization? Brother Jabari, I'm speaking to you in this moment because you watch all my videos. You're able to quote them verbatim when we're on the phone, right?
Brother Jabari, I'm speaking to you in this moment because you watch all my videos. You're able to quote them verbatim when we're on the phone, right?
That was very slick of you. You know the topic, Brother Jabari. You tell me and the community, you remind us daily. You hold a master's from Cornell University. You teach on the university level. The discussion is the origins of civilization. Why are we in South Africa? But I get it. You know, as well as those who study on a collegiate level, that Kemet is not older than Sumer when we talk about civilization. In fact, you already admitted it. You have a video, Brother Jabari, where you say verbatim, if Zion Lexx is talking about Sumer being older than Kemet, this could only mean one thing. He's looking at simply when Kemet becomes a unified nation, which he doesn't tell you the date. Because the date that Kemet becomes a unified nation, we're talking about the Narmer Palette.
Right.
We're talking about 3100 BCE.
Right.
So pay attention to the logic and the disingenuous and the magic tricks that he's doing when he doesn't give you dates. Something that I'm always ostracized for not doing, but he gets away a lot not doing. He says, if Zion Lexx is simply looking at when Kemet becomes a unified nation, then yes, family, it is true that Sumer is older. Time out. I'm not sure if you heard me. I'm going to quote Brother Jabari again, and we're going to play that video clip when this video was re-edited, because it's only a minute long. Brother Jabari says emphatically, if Zion Lexx is simply looking at the time period when Kemet becomes a unified nation, then yes, family, it's true that Sumer is older.
It is, I think, ultimately, when Zion Lexx asks about the origin of Ma'at, what he's actually doing is he's trying to say that Ma'at must be coming from somewhere else. And he posits in his book that Ma'at, and in fact all of Kemetic civilization, comes forward from Sumer. He says that Sumer is older. And I want you to understand that Sumer is actually a contemporary of Kemet. Now, if you are actually simply looking at when Kemet unifies as a nation, then it is true that Sumer is older. That's absolutely true.
Well, the time period that Kemet becomes a unified nation, we're talking about the Narmer Palette, which is one of the very, very first times we see writing, where we see instances or glimpses of law, government, just by the definitions on the palette itself. We're seeing some of the signs of civilization. Brother Jabari, the topic is the origins of civilization. Are you aware of that? This is something that I had to continually say to him during the actual debate. You already lost the debate before the debate started. When you admitted on camera on Sunday the TV that if I'm simply looking at when Kemet becomes a unified nation, then yes, it is true that Sumer is older, because Sumer had those things before Kemet, which is what I brought up during the debate. I showed that Sumer had all of the signs of civilization way before 3100 BCE. Kemet only has it starting from 3100 BCE. And in Jabari's words, that's what makes Sumer older. So we're not talking about the first person in Kemet to throw a stone or take a picture. We're talking about the first signs of civilization in Kemet. That's the debate. But you got to watch these ninjas because they real slick. And I got to say it like I feel it in this instance. You got to watch these ninjas because they real slick with their words. You know good and goddamn well the topic is the origins of civilization. But you have us looking at a monkey ape woman. That is not my ancestor. I'm a Hebrew Israelite. But when someone asks me of my pedigree, I also tell them that I am African. And guess what? I am a proud African because I'm human. I don't come from no ape. Brother Jabari gives us Lucy when he's talking about the origins of civilization. Well, one thing I know is this. Lucy wasn't found in Kemet, Chief. No. So why are we even looking at Lucy? Right. Number two, Lucy is not a human being. She's what they call a humanoid, which would be like half ape, half man. Last time I checked, my narrative, which the Kemetic community impresses upon the world, came out of Kemet, which we showed doesn't exist. But let's walk there with you for a second. My narrative said that man was fashioned and created by a divine being. Man's creation is divine. But hold on, because we do read the Kemetic text as well. And if I'm not mistaken, there's an individual in Kemet known as Khnum. And he's shown making man of clay on a potter's wheel. And that in itself represents in Kemet that from the perspective of the Kemet too, the people of Kemet, they themselves tell you that man has a divine origin. So why is Brother Jabari giving us the Tom Who's narrative of the creation of Africans?
So why is Brother Jabari giving us the Tom Who's narrative of the creation of Africans?
The very same Tom Who that Brother Jabari expresses daily that he has no love for, no connections to, no ties to. Why does he use the Tom Who's narrative in giving us the signs of civilization? You see, it's the Tom Who that needs to talk about apes. Because it's the Tom Who that needs to talk about evolution. Because the way that evolution works, each new strain produces a greater quality.
Right.
This is why the European, styled as the Tom Who in Kemetic literature, needs to force and impress upon the educational classes around the globe evolution, 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 because each new strain becomes greater than that which is previously formed.
Natural.
White people being the last would be the greatest. This is what we're pushing in the Kemetic community. We're looking at Lucy now. We're following the Tom Who. This is what we're doing. You gotta watch these ninjas, Chief. I'm telling you. The very Tom Who they say they reject, you gotta watch these ninjas. I know that my African ancestors taught me that my creation is divine. I even know that some of the African ancestors in the region of Kemet also taught that the creation of man is divine. Except that even in Kemet, it's still taught by way of Sumer. You reaching. I'm reaching? Who's Khnum? Khnum is shown molding man on a potter's wheel. Last time I checked, the potter's wheel was invented in Sumer. So if Khnum represents a deity, a principle, the fact that he is molding man on something that was produced in Sumer lets you know where the idea came from. Because he would not have the instrument upon which he's producing man on had it not been invented in Sumer first.